Welcome to the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast, the show dedicated to bring you the news from the oil patch deep in the heart of Texas, with your hosts, Ryan Ray and Josh Shelton.
We're back with the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast. This is episode 154. I'm your host, Josh Shelton, my friend and co-host, Ryan Ray. Ryan, this is like day 37 of the coronavirus meltdown. We are recording. There's been some news coming out with the Railroad Commission and lots of stuff going on this week. I've been looking forward to getting into it. I mean, it seems like the early last week we had news coming out that prices were going one way. By the end of the week, the narrative has changed. So it just seems like the news in the oil patch is on like 2-day cycles. It's up, down, left, right. So, I mean, the articles we're pulling in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are almost irrelevant by Friday or Saturday now. So it's just a fast-moving pace.
Hold on. Speaking of articles, Josh, I noticed how you wanted to skip over the review that we got. So let's just pump the brakes real quick there. We did get a 5-star review. And let me just say this. I will not say a name, but Josh and Nate can confirm that I'm being serious when I say this. We have a guest who is it fair to say tentatively confirmed? Is that a fair way to put it based upon the correspondence?
Yeah.
Tentatively confirmed to come on. This would be the largest, most popular guest we've ever had on the show. And it would be a name that is safe to say that every single listener will know the name and has heard the person speak and will be familiar with a certain level of the person's work. 100%. That's a safe assumption to say, right?
Yep, 100%. No doubt.
So with that being said, we are at 263 5-star reviews. So if you want to help us, maybe it helps land it, I don't know. But it can't hurt land. Let's go ahead and get to 300 there. Helps the rankings in iTunes. I think we're 25 in the world business news. So get us on up there to maybe Mount Rushmore status. But Josh, we got a roast month in finally. It's been a while.
Boy.
Well, I don't know if Stephanie for the intern is roast or not. It's just roasting her or us or who. And so the last one, if you remember, let's go back, was February 27th. And it said, I met Ryan the other day, and he told me that he enjoyed making podcasts, but that his producer didn't know a soundboard from his skinny hemorrhoidal rear end. That was the last one. It's been a long time since we had a good roast. But here it is. Roast month continues, 5 stars. From Oilfield Trash 94. Came for the banter, stayed for the inadequate reporting. It's just the end. Oil prices are currently higher than the collective IQ of the show.
Ooh.
The guys.
Is it possible to have a negative IQ?
Well, yeah, it depends on when this is submitted. Oil's at 20 right now, so if you take out my 19, you guys get a half a piece. Yeah, that's about right. The guys originally wanted this to be more of a vlog style, but were told their faces would detract from the viewer experience. The reason the audio quality is so bad is because they have to record outside in their garage. Even their own wives don't want to hear their own bullshit. The guys take their kids' teddy bears and sit them in a semicircle to give the false impression they have an audience. They're originally going to have Nate edit in laughs and applause, but quickly found out the only thing the guy's good for is pushing record and stop.
Oh,
good news is viewership is actually up.
Oh,
but that's only because of all of the real news stations have been shut down due to COVID. It's true. Stephanie the intern is actually a fictitious character made for the sole purpose of giving Josh an out for his shanty reporting. Ryan Ray recently discussed layoffs occurring at his company. What he didn't mention was that all that really amounted to was him sending his kids back to their rooms. He's clearly an advocate for communist child labor, as evident for his push for U.S.-China relations. If you look past all the grave shortcomings, they may be the best Texas oil and gas podcast currently available. But take that for a grain of salt. His slim pickings in oil and gas section of iTunes. # Stephanie the intern 2020.
Oh man,
that was good.
A burn.
That was even better than old Jimmy's roast.
Yeah, I think Jimmy, you've been outed. Roast 5-star roast only, 5-star roast only. Before tax day, which is July 15th. So Oilfield Trash 94. Well done, sir or ma'am. I don't know. but well done. That was good. That was good. And so I appreciate that. Some of the things you're saying there might be true about communist child labor and my kids. But we're not getting that today. So anyways,
it's
Josh,
actually a stuffed rabbit that we use for our audience.
Yeah, it's not a teddy bear. It's stuffed rabbits. That's a good point, Nate. Good point.
Well, one of the things I can say that's false in there is my shanty reporting is definitely off. I'm like David Blackman, whose article we're about to pick up in right now. I bring the biggest, best news in the industry. So,
well, the good thing is that if who's ever doing the reporting, if it's you, or if there is really a Stephanie intern, they're at fault, right? So, if there really is Stephanie the intern, then she's technically at fault.
Yeah.
So way to go, Stephanie. Step your game up if you're real. I thought about letting her on, but good gosh, she's already getting calls for being president. I don't know if we can contain this.
Yeah,
thing.
Stephanie 2024 would be the next. Stephanie and Josh 2024.
Oh, the memes will start. She persisted, and all that stuff. She'll be Oh, good God.
Oh yeah, she's a committed woman.
Yeah, her and Nikki Haley 2024 or something like that.
Yep, exactly.
So David Blackman's article, he had a Forbes article came out on April the 30th. So it's really important that we mention dates now. Like I said, the cycles are changing so quickly. But so Chesapeake was preparing to file for bankruptcy on April the 30th. The price of their stocks have been taking a beating here lately. I don't believe they actually filed for it. So I checked.
They filed. I think
they did file.
So the 30th was, I'm on the wrong month. 30 was 30. Maybe it was Friday. They filed, or they're going to file. But yeah, it hasn't stopped like that. Wherever they're at, there's a flood of articles that came out about it. They're going through the preparing process.
So they're in the initial phases at least.
They're going. Yeah.
Okay. So that happened last week. The Railroad Commission, according to David, were meeting to detail a proposal to cut production by 20%, mm-hmm. and there were lots of talks going on about that. And we had a lot of different people in the industry were kind of giving their take on it. They haven't actually dealt with how they're going to do it, though. They haven't given any explanation. I think it was Craddock that came out and said she wasn't sure how we could actually do this.
On the last call, I haven't seen. Now, you mentioned Craddock real quick for listeners. Christy Craddock will be on Energy Week this week, which means tonight, 1 a.m., I believe, is when it goes out. So before the meeting tomorrow, she will be out. And unless they forbid us from asking her, we are going to ask her how she plans to vote as being the swing vote there. So, finish this 5-star roast and then go download Energy Week 5-star there as well, just real quick. But she's the deciding vote, but she hasn't said. The last time she was talking I hadn't listened to the whole thing, but she was really focusing on the legal issues that could be caused from, rolling out the proration, and there's lawsuits because they didn't do this or didn't do this, or, people are going to file lawsuits to stop them. And they were going to seek the Attorney General's help, if I remember correctly. So I don't know where that's at. That's the last I've heard from Christy Craddock. So depending on how you interpret that, she could be saying there are so many legal issues that we'll never be able to get this figured out in time to roll out a plan. So it's better not do it. And she could be serious, or she could just be saying that because she could always bring up, what about this, to kind of delay the process, right? So I don't know if when she was saying that, if there was a list like 10 to 15 legal questions, if she had those answers, she'd feel comfortable moving forward, depending on how they were ruled on, or if it's just something to say that kind of push the conversation down the road. Well, what about this legal issue, right? Because you can continually make up things. So it wasn't clear to me what she was getting at with that, but plan to ask her on Energy Week.
So this little section here, what Blackman has reported is, in brief, the proposed order would establish every operator's October 29 Texas production volume as the baseline, and then limit their production moving forward to 80% of that amount. So whatever they did, say October they did 100 barrels, now they have to do 80% of that amount each month. Operators whose overall volumes are less than 1,000 barrels of oil per day in January would be exempt from the requirements, violations of which would be punishable by a fine of $1,000 per well.
And
So,
to be clear, we are still looking for guests who are for the proration. However, it rules tomorrow. So if you're for it and you want to come on and talk to Josh and I, happy to have you. It could win the day, obviously, but we'd be happy to hear some more because I still haven't heard a good reason for why this is what we should do or what we shouldn't have done. And even then, Josh, you go, well, if they would have passed it back at their last meeting, would that have been more effective than what's happened with the market over the past 2 to 3 weeks? And it seems unlikely. It seems the market was going to cut, in response, especially with the prices going negative and all that was involved with that. That these companies are trying to stop it. And to your point about kind of the news going back and forth, we had 2 weeks ago the WTI was minus 36. I think it got to. Right now, as this recording, it's $20 a barrel. Now that'll go up, that'll go down. Obviously, I'm not saying we're heading to 50. But there's an overall kind of interesting sentiment in the market right now, aside from oil, which is the market seems to be responding a lot better than maybe you would have thought it would have, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we've kind of talked about it, I think, on this show, at least offline, about, there's record unemployment, but then the Dow's up, and you're like, what in the world's going on? So, I'm curious to see these next 2 to 3 weeks, really, maybe to the end of May, what the market does and how it responds, because as the economy starts to open back up, that is obviously good for oil and oil prices, and you're having the shutdowns going on, which is obviously good for oil prices. But by the end of May, are we going to be sitting here going with most of the U.S. economy back up and running, or will we sit here by the end of May going, oh man, we tried to open this thing back up, and now we're going, no, we can't do it because there's flare-ups of the COVID-19 here and there, and they shut things down. So it feels like the market wants to be optimistic, but I'm not sure if it's warranted just quite yet. Does that make sense?
Yep. Well, one of the things that is shocking when I read this is, I know people that work at E&P companies. I know people that are service providers, and you telling me that you're going to take October 2019 and you're going to cut it to 80%. Like, what company is not already at 80% today? Like, what company? Every company that we know has cut production by X amount already. So what you're saying is they're going to, I can't imagine. I can understand they're going to say, well, they're going to ramp back up when prices start to go up, at whatever point in the future that is. But this plan is not supposed to be for when the economy is healthy, like say 2021, when people are actually able to produce at a higher level. Mm-hmm. I just think people need to pay attention to this, because essentially what they're saying is once the market gets back to where it is, now the Railroad Commission is going to have more authority in the oil patch. It's not going to do anything right now because nobody's doing these numbers anyway, because everybody's cut. But once the market gets back to a relatively stable position, now the Railroad Commission is going to have the ability to say, no, you can't produce anymore. And I just, that whole idea is bad to me. I don't, it doesn't make much sense.
Well, it's, and lame duck Commissioner Ryan Sitton said a few weeks ago, he said that he didn't want to set a precedent. He wanted to set it where the bar was so high that it wouldn't be viewed as a precedent. And I thought, well, that's like, I don't think me and you agree on what the word precedent means from government action, because by doing something or doing nothing, you are set a precedent. And so if you want to argue that these are extreme times, but you want to set a high threshold, without explaining what the definition of an extreme time or unique time is, and for us today, it might seem, well, this is obviously unique, right? So for us today, it's pretty clear because it is unique. It doesn't mean that 3 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, that Railroad Commission will interpret that whatever they're going through as at the same level of severity as what we're going through. So we might be 15 years from now going, oh, this is nothing compared to the COVID-19 stuff. But the Railroad Commission might go, well, I don't know. This is extreme. This is dangerous. This is unprecedented, and they may feel that way. So, so if you are on the proration side, just understand that, and they do act, that will be used the most generous way that the Railroad Commission wants it to be used moving forward. And so if they want to take Ryan Sitton's literal, what he's actually saying, which is, the world's got to shut down for us to step in. That's what he's actually saying, and I understand that. If they want to take that, they can. However, they could just point back and say, no. These are extreme times. This is economic waste, and they could get in there and use that as a wedge to do it. They actually don't need the precedent. They can just do it if they want to, is my understanding. So the precedent's kind of irrelevant, but it does give them kind of the mandate. And the final thing I'll say on this, Josh, real quick, is I published this morning on somewhere, just for perspective, just so the listeners kind of understand how to maybe think about these things when you're talking about government intervention. The county that we live in has 17 cases, I believe, of COVID and 2 or 3 deaths, something like that, right?
Yep.
Okay. And so we're under the Texas state lockdown like everyone else. Last week, we had protests in the city, in the county. We live out in the county. We had protests out and about. And then some businesses like a gym started to open back up. And in response, our county attorney decided not to prosecute those people because he felt like his job is not to convict people, just to convict them. It's to see that justice is done. And he's saying that this is an unjust thing that the government's doing. And so I'm not going to go after people for this reason. In response to that, a judge appointed a special prosecutor to then go after those people. So the person who's elected said, no, I'm actually going to execute my authority this way. A judge then appointed a special prosecutor and used his power, her power, I can't remember what the judge was, to then go after these people. And then the mayor stepped in and threatened to pull the people's ability to have a certificate of occupancy. So COVID issues aside, let's just stop and think about that, where you have government trying to get involved. And what you're saying is that as the price goes up and people want to drill, the response by those commissioners or, because sitting will be off by then. So whoever the Craddock and Christian and whoever the third is, those commissioners might respond differently than the current set of commissioners do, right? And they may view their powers differently. So you have in Hood County, you have a county attorney who decided not that this is how his job should be functioned. And in response, you have 2 other elected officials responding, no. We're going to use different means. So when you talk about proration or anything, that's kind of a way to think about it, is that the power can come down from a lot of different angles that you didn't actually think through. Because if I told you, hey, the Railroad Commission isn't going to do this, she's like, okay, great. But then, they're going to do it this way. Like, oh, I didn't see that coming. So that's kind of a local deal that I thought about this morning. I was going through get ready for the show. It's like, okay, when you open these flood doors, this is what you invite in. That some people might be on your side, some people might not be, and we really can't do much about it right now because we can't vote them out of office because there's no elections going on today.
Well, last thing I wanted to read here. This is a little. Blackman quotes a guy named Kenny Stein. He's the director for policy for the Institute for Energy Research. He said that the oil market situation we see today cannot be solved by governmental cuts. He said, adding that the only government solution is letting the economy restart. It sounds a little familiar, Ron. The Railroad Commission intervention now will have virtually no effect on prices, but sets a terrible precedent that will lead to calls for more government cuts every time prices dip. So basically everything you just said, Kenny Stein, he agrees with us. The recommendation we had last week, you want to fix the economy, takes a brilliant mind to say it, but just open the economy back up. Yeah, that'll handle itself. Awesome. So I'm not sure what Blackman's position on this was, because I remember he was on our show once. I'll ask him next time he comes on. But he believes that there should have been more. This should have happened a long time ago. There should have been regulation. Now, he mentions here he thinks that they should have targeted flaring. But it seems that if they targeted flaring, wouldn't that have meant there was more gas on the market, or would they have not produced as much? They slowed down production in order to reduce flaring. Anyway,
you don't know how the market would have responded, right?
Yeah.
They might have had to put it in a pipe, or they might not have drilled the well. I don't know. How the companies would have viewed. Each company probably would have handled it a little bit different if they weren't getting the flaring permit. But that's a good point, though. If you're going to put the gas on the market, then you go hurt folks in the Haynesville or other parts, because now all of a sudden you're really pounding the price of natural gas lower. So you helped oil price, but now it's less workers, I agree. But what about those workers who are working on the rigs for the natural gas? What about those folks?
What about Chesapeake?
Yeah. Yep. Hey, listen, and speaking of which, I don't know if we're getting this today or not, but the Barnett Shale. I don't know if you talking about news. Did you hear about what's going on in the Barnett Shale? Because it's not being reported. It's not really being. It's kind of like this COVID stuff. You're not sure who to trust. The Barnett Shale is up 100% in rig count. 100% rig count increase. We went from 1 rig to 2, baby. We are coming back.
1 rig boom.
Increase. Well, now we're at 2 rig boom. It's almost like a pandemic. It's a boom pandemic here in the Barnett, and we can't get a single headline above the fold. So, just wanted to throw that in there. A little bit frustrating.
The Barnett dies in darkness.
Yes, thank you, Nate. Thank you.
So, special report, Trump told Saudis cut oil supply or lose U.S. military support. So, this report came out apparently 10 days before there was an announcement that the Saudis were going to cut. There was a call on April the 2nd. Trump told Saudi Crown Prince that unless the organization, OPEC, started cutting oil production, he would be powerless to stop lawmakers from passing legislation to withdraw U.S. troops from the kingdom. And then it has a little statement here. The threat to upend a 75-year strategic alliance, which has not been previously reported, was central to the U.S. pressure campaign that led to landmark global deal to slash oil supply. That was a very interesting statement right there to me. I'm curious, what 75-year strategic alliance? I'd like to see a report on that or something, just to have some details, because I was unaware of that alliance. Obviously, it hadn't been reported. So,
they give us oil, we give them weapons. It's kind of the nature of that alliance. It feels like
old school.
Yeah, and Ellen wrote a piece about this. I don't know if I can pull it up while we're talking about U.S. and Saudis not friends, I think is what it's called. I'll see if I can find the article. She wrote a piece kind of talking about some of the stuff. And here it is. This is from Washington Post. I don't have a subscription to you pagans anymore. This is from February 5th of 2020. So we'll include it in the show notes. And I can't remember all of what she said, but she did allude to for the president, that we were allies, kind of what you're talking about as well. And let's see, I think maybe she has another piece on March 9th about some other stuff. Anyways, so we'll try to get that in the show notes. But, this is an interesting thing, Josh. Let me step back here. When I was talking last summer down at Baffin Bay to some folks at the Bush China Foundation, one of the things that I proposed was, at the time, it'd be interesting to see is if the U.S. wanted to get rid of its debt, would be to go to China, which hold, I think, an 8th or 6th or whatever of our debt at the time, and say we will move troops out of certain areas in exchange for canceling debt that you have for us. Now that obviously doesn't sound like a one-to-one economic transition, except for if you're China, which isn't really a military imperial type nation, but if you're China and you're kind of wanting to expand, not deal with the U.S. intervention, it might be a swap to where you could get some U.S. debt off the books and move some bases around or whatever, kind of a win-win for everyone. Trump and Xi wouldn't take my call on that for some reason. I don't know why. But that being said, I think it's interesting that the president uses this because without U.S. support, weapons, especially with what's going on in Yemen, it'd be interesting to see how the Saudis would hold up on their own. You have to remember that Iran and Saudi Arabia are not friendly, and yet they sit on OPEC together. So it's sometimes it's hard for me to go, okay, how much hatred at the top level is really there versus how much perception of hatred. You see what I'm saying? So do the top people, are they really friendly, but they tell their citizens that they hate each other so they can kind of keep the war machine going? Or is it really hate from top to bottom? Because again, there are a lot of OPEC members and nations that don't like each other. But with that being said, this kind of gets to the heart of U.S. foreign policy in general, which is, first off, is this a quid pro quo?
Oh, yeah. That's why that whole stuff so stupid. But
Nate, we need you to weigh in here. Is this a quid pro quo?
Everything is a quid pro quo.
Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is we don't actually have the money to be doing a lot of this stuff. So then you start saying, well, is there better deals to be had? Could the U.S. do stuff differently? But it's not surprising that the president used this tactic. And I have heard some speculate that he actually probably has more of a leash on this than he initially used. So he has a little bit more room to go back to the Saudis if he feels like they don't respond. So I have heard that being discussed. I ultimately think, though, that the June 6th meeting of OPEC, that you're going to see more cuts from OPEC, and we'll kind of squash those talks and strategy plans moving forward of keeping production high and stuff like that, because there's plenty of reports about the Russian National Wealth Fund, the Saudi National Wealth Fund, their economies are trouble. I didn't think when this first started they were going to back down unless they had an out from an outside source, and I wasn't sure if that would even do it then. And they got the outside source to help them, via Trump, and so that kind of started this ball of, they're willing to talk now. And I would suspect that the June meeting, where it stands today, is that they're going to either keep the cuts or increase the cuts or whatever. We covered a story last week, Josh, think about this, for Nigeria. Now, was it Nigeria, Nate, that had the $133 break-even price? I think it was Nigeria.
That was Nigeria.
Yeah, Nigeria has a 133-barrel break-even price. $133 per barrel break-even price. I don't know about you, but we have a long way to go from $133 a barrel. Now, that's mainly because of theft and political corruption and stuff like that, but still. So anyways, that's kind of what I've heard, is that Trump has some more room to go back to the Saudis if he needs to. My anticipation is that won't necessarily be necessary because of what you're seeing here globally, and then I think the OPEC meeting will continue to put the cuts down. But as you alluded to the last article, if we don't open this thing back up, a lot of this is not really going to be relevant for a while at least.
So looking at the deal with the Saudis, so OPEC, this article says that the output surged most in 30 years during price war last month. Mm-hmm. I've been thinking about it. So when they announced they were going to drop prices and they were going to up production the following month, and the coronavirus had the oil prices at that time, if I recall, they were around $45, right, when they announced that cut, and they were headed down. They were slowly ticking down. Like it seemed like not every
cut.
day.
You mean increase?
Huh?
You mean increase, not cut? The
Saudis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cuts. Okay. Yeah.
Didn't they drop price though? They price cut.
Oh, the price cut. Sorry. Yeah.
So when that happened, oil was around 40. I think the Saudis didn't anticipate the effect of the coronavirus. They didn't quite realize that it hadn't made it all the way west yet, and the price was about to take a much bigger hit than what they had originally thought. It seems like they wanted to get out of that argument that they were in with Russians. I mean, that they not only were they didn't want to fold, but I think they were feeling the Debo from the coronavirus. They thought they were going to Debo Rush, and the coronavirus is Deboing everybody.
If you go back to then, I don't think anybody at that time anticipated the world shutting down. I don't think anyone actually anticipated shutting down, if it did, for as long as it did, but shutting down like it did at all. And the folks I talked to seemed to think, if you remember when Blackman came on, he felt like maybe they could do a deal in a week or two, but for David, it didn't sound like he was really convinced, and I don't want to speak for him, just what he said. It didn't sound like he was really convinced that they were going to come to a terms within a week or two, but he said it's possible that they could. And I remember Ellen had said that, that it's possible they could come to a deal as well. But after that first week or two, no one anticipated that the deal was going to stop anytime soon. Now, if you go back kind of the coronavirus timeline, we're still pretty early. I had to go back and look at all the dates, but we're still pretty early in the game there. As it's kind of snowballed over 2 weeks. And then the folks I talked to kind of off the record about this were, my thought was, I think I said it on here, I know I said it offline at least, that it's kind of like two gangsters fighting over a street corner. You can't blink. So I kind of thought they were gonna hold out. And I think that was kind of where the positions were. I think you're right. The Saudis didn't realize, the Russians didn't realize, that no one on those days realized that the coronavirus was going to shut down the economy like it did, and the prices were going to suffer so badly so quickly. So yeah, And then, once they were there, though, I don't think they could have. If Trump, and how much threat did he really give them? I don't know. But he gave them an excuse at least to get out of it, and it seems like both sides wanted to use that excuse at that time. Yeah, and again, if you look at their economies now, they're in bad shape, and so I think that's the reports I've been reading. So he gave them the excuse, but without that, I don't know. I think a little bit revisionist history. Without Trump intervening, my guess would have been at the OPEC meeting, there would have been enough global pressure for them to cut that it would have happened then. At the time, I didn't think that, but now kind of seeing where things are at globally, how rough these economies are, there would have been pressure for them to cut. But all that's moot now. It doesn't matter. But yeah, I think that you're going to see a lot of shut-ins here, obviously. And I think it's possible you'll see OPEC cut or more cuts, or however you want to phrase that, in June. But Josh, I hate to keep saying this, but we got to pound it home. We got to open the economy up. It's just a lot of this stuff doesn't necessarily matter without that.
Yeah. They didn't open up fully. They need to give, as many jobs as possible, and people need to get out, start traveling. With everybody going on vacations right now, open up Disneyland. So the news came out. Rig count slide continues as expected.
Continue to drop again. 100% increase in the Permian. In the Barnett. But we're not going to get that. We're not going to get that in the news. It's just not going to happen. So don't let the fake news fool you, people.
So the U.S. rig count was at 408, and Texas is at 219. So the rig in Texas, it fell by 30. So actually, Texas fell by 30 to 201, and the Permian Basin lost 27 rigs to 219. I think the New Mexico Eddy County
fell 4.
They were down 3 for the week.
Eddy started by 3. Yeah, New Mexico fell 4. So 3 of the 4 from New Mexico came from Eddy County. Yep. Rigs will keep on keeping on. I'm curious where the bottom is going to actually be on the rig count.
Me too. That's what I'm wondering. As the price starts going back up, I think the rigs will stop dropping off, and then they'll probably have a little maybe a month of just kind of hanging in there, and then maybe they'll start ticking back up again.
Yeah, as earnings come out, I think there's a few oil and gas earnings that come out this week. I'd be curious to see, just how bad the beating is across these various industries. These various companies, and then the banks. How the banks going to respond. I think we still got to get through the OPEC meeting, because if you kind of use the OPEC meeting as a timetable, the OPEC meeting is a month from now, basically. We'll know more about what the global economy is doing as far as opening up or not necessarily new demand numbers, but what opening back up. And then you'll know what OPEC's going to do, and you'll have a better picture of how many companies are shutting in wells or quit drilling or whatever they're going to do in the U.S. You have a much better picture a month from now to kind of understand, if banks will consider, reinvesting in these companies, or if they're going to, pull the plug and bankruptcy. And some of these guys are going to bankrupt regardless. I'm not trying to say that, an OPEC deal and an open economy can save everyone. It's just, by that time, I think we'll have a much, much better picture. And of course the Barnett will still be here with our 2 rigs blowing and going. This is how we do stuff. I've named this the OG shale play. We are now the OG shale play. So just let everyone know we're taking that title.
Barnett mania. That's where we're at. So this article right here, probably don't need to hit this. We kind of talked about the OPEC meeting and the Railroad Commission and some of their responses and the production cuts. But just as a point of clarification, Wayne Christian, he is against the RRC mandated production cuts. So
what was funny is, real quick, listening to the last meeting, if anyone was going to side with Sitton, I thought it was going to be him. Based upon some of the comments he made towards the end, he referenced, Oklahoma and North Dakota, and they're having meetings, and they might do something. And so it made you wonder if he was going to allow those commissions from those states to kind of lead the way, and then he could use that to back his position. But maybe he would, now in hindsight, maybe he was just simply referencing it. But anyways, I thought he would be the one Craddock, I wasn't sure about how to evaluate again what the legal deal, what that was actually being was a serious question. She's a lawyer, I think, or former lawyer, current lawyer, how that works. But I didn't know how much of that was actually questions that need to be answered versus kind of a way to push the agenda back. But Christian, I thought, might have been the most likely to flip.
Well, being that he didn't, I don't think they're going to pass it. I mean, I may be wrong. I mean, I'm not very certain.
You going on the record? Are you making a prediction right now?
I'm making a prediction. I don't think they're going to pass it. I don't think they're going to go for it. I don't think Chrissy's going to go for it. But I would not be surprised if she did. So it's kind of like 60-40.
Listen, you got to go all in. Push the chips all in. Which side is she going for?
I think she's going to go.
Tell you if she answers on Energy Week, so you can come back with Nate and at this podcast. So this is it. This is the official record here.
Yeah, Let's put it out there. I don't mind looking like a fool. It only happens once every 4 or 5 years. So that ain't the truth. But she's going to go. But she's against it. Christy's going against it. I think Christy and Christian are going to be against it.
And I agree with that as well. I think that is where it's going to land. So, the irony of ironies would be if his sit-in voted against it. I don't know if it's possible, but it's procedural. Wouldn't that be funny if he voted against it now?
Yeah,
that would be the ultimate politician thing to do. I was going to fix it, but now that it's fixed itself, I realized I shouldn't have tried to fix it. So that would be the.
Well, guys, this is what we were saying a long time ago. No disrespect intended. These guys are too stupid to run the economy or run the oil industry. I mean, they just are. I mean, Sitton is not capable of doing this.
Yes, that's the point. It's not.
I think so. Not. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think it is. It's not possible. It's just. So when you say you're too stupid, you cannot insert name here that can do this. There's too many variables at play. That's the whole point of the free market, is that you let each individual make their decision or collective company or whatever. But yeah, so when we say that someone's not smart enough to do it, it's not. I mean, it could be a knock on that person personally, but it's not necessarily a knock on that person. It's just that. Quick caveat here, Josh. PPP loan program, right?
Yep.
Okay. They rolled it out, and now everyone's getting mad because Chase Bank or Bank of America or whoever went to Shake Shack or whatever these companies were to get the loan. Okay. Well, just to be clear, I don't know why you're mad at Shake Shack or Chase or whoever, because if I was Chase Bank and my biggest customer was Shake Shack or one of the big customers, and they called me up and said, "Hey, want the PPP loan?" I'm going to fulfill the loan to them because that's how it works, right? There's no, as long as they're not lying or being fraudulent what they're doing, there's no reason not to. Now, there is a side argument for the Shake Shacks of the world that they could have gotten funding from somewhere else, and that is where they could get in trouble at potentially. But anyways, I'm saying that the point is that when the regulation was rolled out, the people followed the rules as they were on some level, aside from the alternative funding thing, because that is a question that has to be answered. But the general guidelines were being followed. And then now people are saying, well, they rolled out too fast. They didn't think about this. They didn't consider that. We should have reworded that. And if you go read what's going on with the PPP loan, there's so many questions that aren't answered and things that can't be spoken for. And the program's been out for a month now, 3 weeks, something like that, right?
Yep.
And so it's just that there's too many questions to be answered that a bunch of politicians just can't answer them. And so I couldn't answer them for sure. I mean, I'm sure if I wrote some policy, it would omit something else. And so that's the point, is that when you read about these programs, there is a level of incompetence that's going on. The other thing is there's just too many variables for one person or group of persons to consider. And we call that the law of unintended consequences, that you do this and therefore something that you'd expect to happen happens. And so anyways, this is an aside that the issue here is no one can run the oil and gas market for the globe. I will be happy to try, though, for the right price.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely we'll give out free advice for sure.
I mean, I'm just saying, but if they want me to run OPEC and the U.S. and wherever, like 100 million a day, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
My job will be to do nothing.
Yeah, and just to clarify on what I'm saying too. So, Sitton says we need to decrease by 20%. He says that a month after all these companies come in, like Concho, Diamondback, Marathon, Exxon, Chevron, you name them, they come out and say, "Hey, guys, oil prices are low. We need to cut by 20 to 30%. And then a month later, we need to enforce production cuts of 20%. It's like, so I'm kind of saying it both ways. Number one, the oil industry is much too complicated. Number two, this isn't the guy that you would want to do it. And I'm not, and I don't mean that as a knock against, I'm not either, but, I mean, Exxon has some highly paid, very intelligent people, looking at this stuff.
Yeah, and that's a discussion that we need to get into. Maybe we'll do a special episode on kind of free market theory and what's going on there. But part of what you're getting at is it should be Exxon's risk to take.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
It does not mean that Exxon, their smart engineers, will get it right. It should be their risk to take. And that's the thing. It should be their risk to take, not Commissioner Sitton's. Now we're going to get off into what the commission can do and can't do, and I don't want to digress too far off of this, but that's ultimately the point, is that it's Exxon's risk to take. And if you don't like it, what do? You sell the stock, or you pull an icon, you get board members. There's ways to change what Exxon's doing, but that it should be their risk to take, not Sitton's to do it. And finally, to your point, is that whatever Sitton writes as a rule, Exxon has better lawyers than Sitton's capacity to write the legislation to figure out ways to circumvent them or to get around them or whatever, if they really want to. And so that's the other thing. And then everyone's mad at Exxon for breaking the rules, which they didn't break. They just interpreted them a certain way.
Yeah, outmaneuvered.
That's exactly right. And that's what's happened with the PPP loan for the big companies. They're gonna say, well, the rules were this, and we followed them. And they're gonna say, well,
we have 5 subsidiaries that are all under this price, and
those subsidiaries weren't able to get funding because so they will figure all that out, I'm sure. So.
All right, so April 30th, there was an article came out that oil was up 20% by optimism on demand recovery and output cuts. And I mean, that kind of changed like 2 or 3 different times during the week. So I checked what was oil prices at this morning. I think they're like 19 this morning.
I think it was 20 at the beginning of the show. It's down to
1977. Yeah, they've been hovering right around there for the last couple of days. So I wouldn't say that makes me confident or optimistic one way or the other.
So last Monday they were at $10, $11, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the Permian deal. The Barnett joke. We're up 100%. Okay. Well, being up 100% the Barnett doesn't really do anything. It's just a joke. We like to have fun with Sergio about yada yada. The price increasing 10% or 15% or 20% right now, it doesn't really do anything substantially for our listeners and folks like us in the market. We need the price to jump up orders of magnitude for it actually plays. And so when you're reading the headlines, you got to kind of actually get into the numbers because you will see the headlines, oil moves up 5%. Oh, okay, whatever. That doesn't do anything. So you need substantial more growth consistently is what you're getting, I think, Josh, and we can't have another $10 barrel week or whatever.
Yeah, we need to avoid one of those for at least 100 years.
Yeah, I think we've had it for our negative 34 is good for the next 100 years. We've seen it. My son was complaining about not seeing unique things. Well, he lived to see oil minus 34, and so there you go.
Agreed. Well, Ryan, we're about to jump into our Texas roundup. There were quite a few stories out. A lot of earnings reports came out last week. I didn't hit all of them. I just kind of sprinkled a few in there. Or Stephanie, the intern, she gave me a lot more than I actually put in here. So I just picked out some ones that I thought were interesting. But there's news coming out on these earning reports. They were last week, and then there are more coming out this week as well. So we'll pick some of those up in next week. But for now, there's a couple of stories that weren't necessarily with earnings. So one was a rig up expanding pilot COVID-19 testing program for Midland, Odessa employees. And the reason I mentioned this one was because there were talks about in different areas like New York, they were going to force testing, kind of like a drug test. There's going to be a COVID-19 test. And I'm just curious how that's going to play out in Texas or in the Permian. But I'm going to link this in the show notes if someone wants to go and kind of check it out. right here it says that they launched 1,000 oil and gas solar wind industry workers have been digitally screened and at least 500 workers physically tested. So they're testing folks.
Yeah, listeners, email in. We'd love to hear what's going on with your company. The COVID. Those of you who are still lucky enough to have a job, are y'all doing the testing? Does it, like, if you're moving around from you might be out going from one rig to another rig. Do you have to get tested on each rig? I'm curious because it is a kind of a unique deal. It's not like you're going to if you're going downtown in Houston, obviously that's a little bit different. But I am curious to see what is happening in the oil field space.
Article, Gravity offers up to 5,000 tanks for crude storage. So storage was filling up. Energy Transfer announced, I think, a week or two ago that they were going to store like 2 million barrels in their lines. Now Gravity's stepping up and saying they have 5,000 tanks for crude storage. They've already shipped out more than 1,000 tanks in the past couple of weeks and have another 4,000 more available for immediate shipment. So companies are stepping up. This is free market at work here. Companies are stepping up, trying to use the opportunity for needed storage for all this oil. Next article, small advantages could add up to... Go ahead.
Never. Go ahead. I don't want to get distracted. Go ahead.
Small advantages could add up to keeping service companies afloat. This article was pretty cool. So service companies, as we all know, are taking a beating in the oil and gas industry right now. This article mentions there's no silver bullet to make it through this time, but there's a company, W&W Energy Service, is using something called a Knuckle boom crane truck to help reduce time and costs associated with traditional crane movements, and costs have been reduced by an estimated 40%. So that's given him a incredible advantage over many of his competitors. And he said it's been helping his company tremendously during this difficult time. So for service companies out there, these downturns, they do lead to innovation and they lead to higher efficiency. So we hope your company is one that makes it. And I think the industry can definitely improve through this time if the right companies can find ways to stay afloat and survive it. Next article, Midland, Texas-based Intrepid Directional Drilling doubles business with acquisition. I wanted to ask you about this, Ryan. So Gyro Data agreed to sell its directional drilling business to Intrepid Directional Drilling Specialists, doubling Intrepid's directional drilling capabilities. Did we have Gyro Data on, or was that one of them that we didn't get on? We did have them on, right?
No, we had them on. Yeah. I'm trying to think of...
They had the multi-directional thing. They're looking at the water table and
3D scanning or something.
Yeah. So they sold to Intrepid, which is a EMP company, right?
Well, I'm not exactly clear if they sold
aspect of their business.
You're right.
Directional building business. I see. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be worth following up on. Maybe we could try to get one of their guys back on sometime. Mm-hmm. All right. When the flame goes out, the Permian's methane problem worsens. All right, well, this is pretty basic. This person's saying they need to be flaring because if they're not flaring, the methane is actually much worse on the environment. So this article, it's just in the news. Flaring's in the news. So I thought you got multiple different avenues. Some people want to shut down flaring in a sense of don't let any methane emissions go out or let it be flared. This article saying we'd rather flare it than let it be released unflared because it's much worse on the environment. So just another article with flaring being out front and center in the headlines. This was an article that came out. I saw this one, Ryan. I almost fell out of my chair. So I'm probably going to butcher the name. But Helmerich and Payne decommissions 37 drilling rigs and lays off 2,800 people. Mm-hmm. My goodness. So this is Sergio Chapa, May 1st, 2020. This is bad news, man. That's terrible. That's terrible. 2,800 people just got laid off. Yeah,
it's bad. And sorry for all those folks. Get laid off, man. It's tough. It's tough. And so we don't want to minimize that at all. That's terrible news.
Updated. Shell cuts dividend for the first time since 1940s in a prudent move to bolster finances. Yeah, so 80 years. Diamond off. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's the layoff news. I don't really think we're as far along as maybe we want to be with the layoff news.
Yeah,
we still got. You might not see the big numbers routinely like you have been seeing, but I'm wondering if we're going to see a consistent, 100 here. Of course, a lot of the service companies you won't hear about because they're not big enough to get news. But I wonder if you, as the Dallas Fed or whoever tracks these things, you're going to continue to see, these numbers for a long period of time, and until we get back up to prices that are sustainable. So. Because it's not just the layoffs, Josh. I guess what I'm trying to say is that companies are going to shut their doors, and so service companies and folks like that. And so that's the real concern.
Yeah, if you ask me, I mean, we're not even. We're probably at 40% of the cuts we're going to see. We're probably only at 40%. We're not even halfway through what's about to go down. That's my take. I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. I don't want to be right, but that's all I'll say. So Diamond Offshore files for bankruptcy amid historic crude crash. That's pretty self-explanatory. Oil and gas companies set to lose $1 trillion in revenue this year. So this was from CNBC, had a report. $1 trillion in revenues are going to be lost this year. That's also not surprising at all. Mm-hmm. Exxon posts historic loss on route with Chevron in retreat. So I'm going to link this in the show notes. There's a couple of stats you may want to look at there. It's pretty interesting. And if you want to see something funny, every single article I've pulled up today has this park ranger being shoved into the water. And no matter what I do, it keeps popping up. So if you look at the articles today, you're going to see a park ranger being shoved into the water. And if it's not that, you're going to see Shake Shack grilling burgers, which is not good for my sanity at 11 o'clock on Monday morning. I'm about to eat my arm off. we got one more article, Ryan. This is Hart Energy. Permian Shale producer Contra Resources takes $12.6 billion charge. Reported bigger first quarter loss on April 30th. And so they're feeling some of the pop with that. So with that, Ryan, I think that rounds us up for the Texas Roundup. A lot of news out there. We'll link to all of it in the show notes. Earning reports coming out this week. We're going to cover those. I'm going to listen to Energy Week. Christy Craddock's coming on. That's pretty high profile. So I'm looking forward to that episode, and we'll bring some news of that to the next week's show.
If Nate would book some guests, that'd be nice. I was saying. So if you want a 5-star roast, Nate, feel free. Nate's open season on Nate. We'd prefer no more Stephanie for president. That's getting a little bit carried away. And Speaker, the Prophet of Doom, has returned. I don't know did we say that last week? He came back? Yeah, he's back. Yeah. We got a Speaker says. How many Speaker says are out? Nate, 1, 2? How many we got out?
2. We got 2 out on YouTube now.
Yep, 2 new Speaker says our YouTube. So go check those out. He's Speaker. So he will be destroying the Texas Railroad Commission if they do not vote in favor of proration, I'm sure. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully he gets feeling better. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it, and we will, until next time, keep climbing.